Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing the Green Leaves project. Aww. I have Keenan here working the cameras.
Hello.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
We're gonna do this project in 2 steps.
1, 2?
1, 2.
Remember that time you had 7 steps?
Yes.
Drastic change.
Not this one.
Not at all.
The first step is we're gonna make leaves. Our second step is we're gonna make more leaves.
Stop it.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the supplies I'm using and how to go into this, I just wanted to take a moment to help you understand this project a little bit more. Because I've noticed in myself as a teacher, I've been challenging myself to come up with really interesting projects to keep you guys engaged. But sometimes I feel like that is counterproductive of my entire point, which is you make art to play. We paint to feel good and experience joy and try things and learn something. And even though those tutorials do that, sometimes if it's all about this technique and making this image look exactly like this image and doing all of this, then it becomes a little bit stressful. And I thought, we need a break. We need a break from trying to, the elephants tutorial was rough, the hibiscus tutorial is a difficult one. You know what I mean? I noticed that these projects are becoming more challenging, which again isn't bad. I love pushing you guys to trying something new. I think that's how we learn. But also we need to have breaks. We need to have moments where we are literally here to hang out and paint leaves and to play with our brand new paints that we're getting in the subscription box this month. So that is the whole point of this project. So if you're looking at this going I'm sorry, why are we painting this? And we're painting it for joy. That's it.
I love this plan.
That's all we're doing. So relax, have fun. There's no stress, and make sure that on your art journey, whatever journey that is, you allow these moments of just play and joy without this crazy expectation at the end. And this is just as valuable, if not more, because this passion, this love, this interest, this exploring is how we stay consistent and not burn out. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So we are using 4 colors for this project. Now, if you are a Watercolor Box subscriber, we have a really wonderful treat, which is we're using tube paints instead of liquid watercolors. We've never done tube paints before in a subscription box before, so I'm super excited to show you guys how to use tube paints. So this brand is Sennelier, and this is the Le Petite Aquarelle.
Aquarelle.
I really don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm so sorry.
Maybe it's aquarelle? Aquarelle.
A quarrel.
A quarrel between 2 people.
And there's 4 colors. So our very first color is primary yellow. Our second color is primary red. Our third color, can you guess it, Keenan?
I'm gonna say blue.
Primary blue.
Oh, should I have said primary?
Yeah.
Aquarelle.
And our last color is Payne's Gray. So, just a little background about tube watercolors before you start painting.
This is why I'm here.
What?
I want the background. I need some
Wonderful.
deets.
Good.
I'm so excited about knowing more about tube paints.
Let's get the deets.
The deets.
So when it comes to tube watercolors, they come out wet. So they're different from cake watercolors, which are already dry in little cubes, which you have had in subscription boxes before if you've been with us since the beginning. So the benefit of having ones that come out in tubes like this is, one, you can kind of control your palette a little bit easier. It's more cost effective because you can refill the tube, the little squares. Traditionally, what I like to do is I like to prep my palette by putting the colors on my palette and letting them dry. and then using them. Now these ones we are going to use wet because I feel like we can set up our palette for future projects the rest of the month by just working off the dried ones, where this project you can't do wet. The reason why people don't usually, and I don't want to say people because everybody does things different, but for me, I don't use the paints wet, is because you tend to use a lot more of the paint by painting it when the paint is still wet. Well, when it dries, they can last a lot longer, okay? Oh. Now, some people choose to paint with them while they're wet because you get different, you can get like thicker, like paint. Does that make sense?
Like rather than layering a bunch of paint, you can have just one thick layer?
Yeah, like you can use it for texture kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
So this one, we're just gonna paint with it being wet because we're just playing. I want you to get used to it. And then in the future, as we do the rest of the projects for our month of September, these will be dry and we'll be able to use them for the future projects. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Super cool.
Those are our 4 colors. Now we're just using one paintbrush. We're just using our round 6 today. And we are using Let's Make Art branded watercolor paper, which is a cold press paper, 140 pound. And this paper, this project, I'm not gonna tape down. It's good to go, okay? So, we gotta do our oath.
I'm excited. Oath.
If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
I promise to have fun.
Why did you pause?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I was listening and I was like,
I thought I messed up.
no, you did great.
I was like, oh my gosh, did I say the wrong? What?
I just paused and I was like, uh-huh. I was like, oh wait, I need to repeat.
Okay. So for this project, we're just gonna make leaves. That's it. So to make leaves, we're gonna mix green. Now, I also feel like this is a great lesson in color mixing. I've heard from multiple people that green is a really difficult color for people to mix. So we're using the 3 primary colors here, and to mix green, I'm going to take yellow and I'm going to take blue. Now, depending on how much I add of each, I'm gonna get different greens. So I'm gonna do a couple different right here just on my palette. So this one I did kind of even amounts of yellow and blue. This one here, I'm gonna grab more yellow and just a tiny bit of blue. So you see how that green is different?
Ooh, yeah. I love that dark green though.
Me too. And then we can do a more blue-green by having more of the blue and just a little bit of the yellow. So it's more kind of like a turquoise. Oh, I am so obsessed with this color.
That is a great color.
And then you might be like, okay, well, what are we gonna do with this red? Now, red is the complement of green. That means they're across from each other on the color wheel. When you mix red in with green or complements together, they desaturate the color. These are very vibrant greens right here, right? So if you're like, I wanna make a green, but I don't want it to be like yelling in my face green, you mix green, and then we're gonna take a bit of red, and all of a sudden that's more kind of a brownish green, which is a beautiful green too. You see that?
Yes.
And then we also have Payne's Gray. So like, let's see what happens when we mix that into the party. So we got blue, we got yellow, and let's grab some Payne's Gray. Ooh, that's a pretty green.
Sarah, I have a question.
Sure.
It's gonna be a weird one.
Sure.
When I mix colors, I do swirling patterns with my brush.
Like this?
Uh-huh. I'm noticing you do not.
That's right.
Do you know why?
I feel like because I'm trying to get the excess paint off of the actual bristles.
Ah.
So I feel like I'm kind of like
moving it around and rotating the brush itself?
Yes.
Okay.
And also I learned to mix colors with oil paint in art school, and you usually use a palette, a knife. Oh my gosh, what are those called? A palette knife. That was embarrassing. A palette knife to mix, which, have you guys seen that? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I think so. The one I've seen is kind of a different shape.
Yeah.
It's just a metal
metal,
almost like a tooth looking thing.
long tooth.
Yeah.
And so you grab the color, and then you kind of like mix it back and forth, that kind of thing.
Sense.
So I'm kind of using my paintbrush in the same way. Okay?
I like that.
Great question, Keenan.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's do this. So you can start with any color. Again, any green. It truly doesn't matter. This is an exercise in just trying things out. So I have my green, and I'm just gonna make a leaf. Boop.
Plot twist, this is an entire project of lips.
Okay, what Keenan is getting at here is once upon a time, I was trying to explain the shape of a leaf, and I said like, it's kind of like lips, or an eyeball, or a football.
Yeah.
And he's like, Keenan's like, or a leaf. You're not wrong. Okay, so how I like to do my leaves, and this is also a great practice in just doing leaves, is I like to kind of outline it. So I'm doing like and it's curved, and then it narrows in. So that means the edges go to a point and back to a point, and then you fill it in. And also what I like to do is when it's wet like this, I like to drop in another color and just let that go.
Our tube paints,
Yeah.
Our tube paints, they look like almost like a gel.
Yeah.
So is the consistency when you are painting with them, is it very similar to watercolor, or are there subtle differences or drastic changes when you're painting between the two?
Between liquid watercolor?
Mm-hmm. But what we normally use.
It is pretty drastic a difference because this has like, it's viscous. Can you please look that up to make sure I'm using it right?
No, we're gonna roll with it for a few more minutes and then I'll look it up.
But that means it's thick, which means like if I'm pulling directly from my wet pile here, when I paint with this, like there's texture, there's resistance a little bit. Like I can feel how thick it is on my brush when I paint with it, which means I'm using a lot of paint. Now, can you tell between this one that I put up how transparent it is? You can see that paper through that.
Yeah.
This one I was using a lot of paint, so it's not as transparent.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that when you're using tube paint and the paint is still wet like this is, it's super easy to treat watercolor as if it's acrylic. If you do that though, you are going to go through all of your paint so fast. So don't be afraid to water it down. You want it to be transparent. You want to kind of pull it off to the side and add water to it. And that's why when you wait for your paints to dry, you don't use as much because you have to use water to like bring it back. And so automatically you're having a good water to paint ratio. When this is already wet, it's really easy just to like scoop it up. And again, that's not bad. Some artists choose that on purpose to get the texture, like the different textures. But you will go through your paint very quickly if you do that.
That's nice though. I like having the water ratio.
Yeah. So like, I want you to notice the different levels of transparency that I have going on with these leaves. Use that to your advantage. Like, play around with that. Have some be really like barely there colors. Have some be, gosh, what is the word I'm looking for? Opaque.
I used to think opaque meant transparent.
I did too, I really did.
But why? It literally means not transparent.
I really, before I started teaching this, had to make sure I was clear on my definitions of transparent and opaque.
Well, you nailed viscous. That was correct.
Yes?
Yes. Having a thick or sticky consistency.
Okay, so this is also where you can play with colors, right? So like what I just did there is I took just straight blue, which is like this gorgeous color. And while it's still wet, I'm gonna grab a little bit of yellow and just kind of drop that in.
Ooh, that's nice.
See what it does. This is also why I feel like these projects that are kind of like low stakes projects, I want to say, are super beneficial, because this is where you can build the confidence to do things like this in like more detailed paintings, where like I understand that it's really scary to just drop a thing of brown or a thing of yellow or, you know, the paint color blue in something that's not blue. Like that can be intimidating. You're afraid you're going to mess it up. But if you practice on things like this, then when it goes to when you're painting on a big project, you have a little bit more confidence to say, I know that when I drop yellow into blue, it actually does something kind of cool. And I'm not scared of messing this up. You kind of learn to trust yourself a little bit more.
I also think it's important to point out that you've done several different ways of a leaf. So you've done, now you're doing the wet on wet, where you already have the water down and then you add the color.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think this is going to be a beneficial project to practice all kinds of different things.
Yes, Keenan, you make a really great point. So if this is one of your first experiences with watercolor, we have an entire beginner series where we go over different techniques. The one that Keenan referred to was wet on wet, there's wet on dry, there's glazing. So we kind of go over all of those in that beginner series, but this is a great way to practice all those different techniques. So one of them, like Keenan was saying, is I'm going to paint my leaf with just water. It's probably hard to see on the video, but trust that there's just water there. And then I'm going to grab some green and I'm going to drop that green into the water. Just like that. And it's just going to move within that water and it's just going to be a happy little leaf. Okay. Another different kind of wet on wet technique is I'm going to put paint down, and while it is still wet, I'm going to drop in another color. That's also wet on wet. So wet on wet is just putting, having a wet surface and putting wet into that wet surface. Okay.
Got it.
Wet on dry, if I were to go back to one of these first leaves that I did and it's nice and dry, I can pick up some paint and paint on top of that.
Ooh, I like that.
And it will stay sharp. It won't fuzz out. While if it's still wet and I try and do like a line detail, see how that it spreads?
Yeah.
It's because the surface is wet. Now try and also play with the orientation of your leaves. You see how some of them are going this way, some of them are going this way, some of them are going up and down. Kind of pay attention to spacing. Again, low stakes projects like this are great practices in composition. Gosh, I just love that color. Also, can we talk about this leaf?
The blue in there?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Can I also say that on this reference, I had a water drop on my leaf, and I thought that that fuzzy water drop texture was so cool. Do you see that?
I do.
I loved that that happened. That was totally an accident.
Those are usually the best kind.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe some of these leaves are, like you'll see, like this one, I kind of like used a thin line to draw it, and I didn't even fill it in all the way. Because why not? You know what I mean? Like,
ooh.
Do that. Maybe you do one where you just don't fill in the center.
It gives
like,
it a little bit of a glare.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I like that too. Okay, that looks like a mask for an eye.
There we go. Now we
nice.
got, now you see the eye.
Now I see it.
And I'm going to bring in some red to this. Oh my gosh, you see how much brown that made that?
Yeah.
So if, like, let's say you're mixing on your palette and you're like, oh, that's too much red. Oh no, you know, like I totally mess up that whole color. What I like to do when that happens, because that totally happens to me, is I just scoop up some of that brown, move it over, and then add more color to it. And now that's more like the color that I was going for. Mm. You could go and try and bring this back. You would just end up using a lot of paint, which is not bad, especially if you're intending to use this color a lot. Or you can just pull from it and like mix something new if you don't want to like bring it back. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's cool. Can you show us a one-stroke leaf?
Yes, I can. So I showed you guys how to do, like, you can outline it and fill it in.
Really, Sarah, if you were already planning on that?
No,
and I
Keenan,
stole your thunder.
You did not.
Okay, perfect. Can you say that I did, so I have like some street cred or something?
Can you please get out of here, because you're doing my job better than I am?
Nailed it. Yes.
No one can know that you're actually the artist here, okay? We got to keep on this
Keenan's been the artist
facade.
for years.
He actually comes up with all of this. I'm just a pretty face.
Oh no. Yeah, I have a face for radio.
Yeah. Okay, so what Keenan was saying is that you can try and do leaves in one stroke depending on your pressure. So if I start, I'm going to do it here, just so you guys can see that pretty well. If I start light pressure for my point and then push down, thick belly, and then lighten that up, then I have a one stroke leaf right there. Okay.
Boom.
Now, I will say that when you're trying to do like single stroke leaves, it's so much easier if you have a little bit of a rounder brush, bigger brush. Because the benefit of a round brush is it's narrow on the top so you can get a point, and it has a belly. It has a nice thick belly, which means that you can be flexible in the thinner thickness of your line without having to switch your paint brushes. In watercolor, this is super beneficial because timing matters. Whether your paper is wet or dry really matters in watercolor. So it's really wonderful. I prefer to use rounds a lot in my work because I can do a thick line, I can do a thin line, I can do both, depending on how I'm holding my brush and the pressure. But even with that being said, the thickness of the belly of the brush limits you in how thick your line can go. So, like if I have a round 2 here, which is another one of our common brushes, even if I'm doing a thin line and pushing down as hard as I can, I'm really limited in how thick that stroke can be. So if you're trying to make leaves that are nice and round, have a nice thick belly, then it's way easier to do that with larger rounds because then you have a wider range of how wide your belly can go. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So actually later in the project, I do recommend using a round 12. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can still absolutely do it with the round 6. But I kind of wanted to show you guys how using a larger bellied brush can help with single stroke painting.
Cool.
Kind of thing. So that's a preview and that project is actually the wildflower one, this one here.
Oh snap.
Yeah. So I don't want any of you all freaking out. You can do this with a round 6. I just kind of like want to show you some other stuff too, you know.
Thank you.
Please don't get mad at me. Keenan, stop yelling at me.
Listen, if you're improving our habit and increasing our arsenal, then we'll accept it.
Thank you.
But if you come at us with that other stuff, then you're crossing the line.
Okay, so gosh, can we talk about this leaf right here?
Yes, let's talk about it.
Because I'm in love with it.
Okay.
I also really love this guy. So what you're seeing here, these hard edges are called blooms. When you have uneven drying times on a paper or like uneven water disbursement, you will get these hard edges, blooms. I love them. I think it brings visual interest with zero effort, and I'm kind of all about the zero effort. You know what I mean?
That's on your wall in the motto. All about zero effort.
I'm all about 100%. So I just love that there's a way that I can accidentally do something on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's kind of cool. So a lot of watercolor, I feel, is embracing what happens. It's a wonderful practice in letting go. Wonderful practice in just saying, oh, that happened. I'm not mad about it, and moving on.
Now I can't stop looking at those 2 leaves that you
Right?
pointed out. Yeah, those look great.
And it's just like, what if we took the time to celebrate what is instead of being upset about what isn't?
Yeah, I like that.
And that is such, like, when I first tried watercolor, I didn't understand it. I was so frustrated by it. I felt like I couldn't control it. I literally was using it like acrylic paint. Like there was no transparency in my watercolors. It was so opaque. I truly didn't understand the benefit. And then as I started painting with it more, understanding how to use it, how to play with it, and the benefits of it, it was like this whole wonderful realization of, you don't have to control everything. And what if you just let it be? What happens if you were okay with that? And I really feel like that is a lesson that can be used outside of painting. And I think one that has helped me tremendously. Like, watercolor has taught me how to be okay with whatever happens. Or at least, like, don't get caught up on the small stuff, you know?
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It really isn't. If you guys are lost, we're on step 2 now. Making more leaves.
What a great step.
And like another technique, which is one of my favorites, it's another version of wet on wet, where you guys saw where it was just water and I dropped in paint, or the paint was wet and I dropped in more paint, or you can do paint and you drop in water. And like, it's so funny because I'm trying to pay attention to what colors are too similar. Like, those are too similar of color right next to each other, and that's throwing me off.
We need to change that.
So let's
Ooh.
put a different color in there, maybe even a bit of yellow.
Oh, that's nice. Hear me out.
Yeah.
A nice fall leaf color.
Ooh.
Thrown in there randomly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think for these projects, I guess sometimes I get a little bit insecure when I plan projects like this, because I can tell if you're in the Facebook group, I know if you guys are excited about a project or not, because you like say it. You know, where you're like, I am not excited about this month. I'm like, oh, okay. Which, that's fine. You don't have to like everything I do. That's okay.
You're like, no, I can tell because I read it.
But so sometimes when I do projects like this, I get a little bit afraid that like this isn't seen as valid, right? Like, you're like, what is this? And I get that. But I also feel like this is opportunity here, and I just don't want you guys to lose in our quest to learn, in our quest to improve, in our quest to impress ourselves. We can't lose this part. We can't lose the experimentation and the joy and the trying things. And this project in particular is a great study in any technique you want to improve. You want to improve color mixing? Here you go. You want to improve values? Here you go. You want to improve drawing and shape and brush control? Here you go. You want to improve composition? Here you go. Like, don't undermine things because they don't look as exciting the first time. But I'm saying that more for me than for you. You guys might be, you're like, Sarah, what are you talking about? This is fine. But in my heart, I'm like, oh, please like me, you know? And
now I'm going to be more conscious about what I post on Facebook. Just going around reading people's comments.
In a space.
In a public space.
That our company
How dare
manages. It's fun. And I say that as if that happens a lot. People are so kind in that group. It's such a supportive community. I love seeing how you guys share and post and encourage and ask questions and learn. Like, that's everything. That was the whole point. I love seeing how interactive it is. And I love you guys sharing what it is that you're learning, or what it is that you want to learn, or what would you like to see, you know, like that's all really wonderful feedback.
I like to see favorite parts, because whenever someone mentions like a specific thing, it's always interesting to see that part of it.
Yeah. Gosh, hello. That's beautiful.
Hello.
Hello. I love that.
Get out of town. Extra, extra. This leaf is great. Read all about it.
So I just grabbed some red. Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that feels a little too different to me. That feels like that leaf just doesn't belong.
It's too unique.
Which,
it needs to conform a little bit more.
Because this is play, you can say, that's cool. Let's let that leaf be. Or you can be like, let's give you some life here. Let's make you not be a dead leaf.
Aww.
Just do another layer. And you can also do things like this. Like I put that, but now it's super opaque, right? Mm-hmm. So it still feels disjointed. And
that's a completely different leaf.
And then now we can put in the color.
Wow.
There it goes. He's in there.
Transformation day.
Transformation day. I'm also noticing too, if I'm looking at this in terms of value, that my middle here, this all right here is very light value. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you actually see that?
I think so, except for the one dark one that you circled. Yeah.
Okay, so the ones all around it, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
So I kind of just want, you can go back in even after it's dry. Do another layer on top.
Oh, see, that changed the look too.
Yeah. I know that sometimes people think watercolor is really hard because once you put something down, it's down. And that's partly true. But there's ways that you can adjust. Like that, you know, you can lift color out and put it back in. You can layer, you can lighten.
This is a great project, Sarah.
Thank you. And there is so much benefit to just going. This is really where, like, for me, like that element of kind of therapy comes in just a little. It's kind of mindless. It's repetitive. It's creating patterns. It's just low stakes. It's playing. It allows my brain to process and think, wander. It's kind of like a meditation, you know?
Very calming.
Yeah.
Very relaxing.
And if you want to like kind of zhuzh your painting up a little bit, if you want to go in and like do little veins, you can. Maybe you do like dots around it. You know what I mean? Like, this is yours. If you want, if you've been thinking about an idea, if you've been struggling with a technique, if you just wanted to try different color mixing, this is where this can happen. And remember, at the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper. So if you try something and you're like, ooh, I don't know about that. Oh, throw it away. Get another piece of paper. Try again.
Rinse and repeat.
That's our project.
Beautiful.
That's it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this time and allowed yourself to play. I hope you guys can use this as an opportunity to improve skills, learn something new, or to just kind of zone out. All of those are valuable. All of those are necessary. For your palette, when it comes to painting future projects, I'm just going to leave this like this. So when you see future tutorials, I'm just going to be working off my paint that I've already put on here that's dry. I'll probably take a wet paper towel and kind of clean up the green a little bit so I have more mixing room. But for these big chunks of tube paint, do not, like, this is so much paint. Don't go and rinse your palette out and waste all of this paint. Please don't do that. So
I'm glad you said that.
yeah, let this dry and save it for our next project so then it's ready to go and we can just start painting, because when it comes to tube paints, again, you can use it right out of the tube. You can get some cool textures using it right out of the tube, but you will go through that paint quickly. So for the most part, for me, I use my tube watercolors. I let them dry after I put them on my palette before I paint with them, like 99% of the time. So, if you are on Facebook, you can join that Facebook group. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's a large community, but it's extremely kind, extremely supportive, and a really accessible way to start sharing your work. It is so scary posting your paintings. It's so scary putting yourself out there. It's a very vulnerable thing to say, hey, I made this, here's a picture of it. But that's a really wonderful community that you can start doing that to kind of build up that courage. It's scary sharing our passions sometimes and our joys and our interests. We're afraid that people are going to say mean things. Mock us, judge us, criticize us. Those are all common fears. The only way to overcome them is to power through them and to be the voice of support to others. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not ready to post your work, congratulate other people who are. Be kind to them. Be supportive of that. And that's how we can perpetuate a community that lifts each other up instead of kind of breaks each other down, because I'm not interested.
I have a quote to go with what you said.
Please.
Do the things you fear, and the death of fear is certain.
Whoa. Who said that?
I don't know.
Don't know? Beautiful.
I feel like that's really pertinent to what you were saying.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely. So, that is a great place to be afraid, but do it anyway.
Yep. Push through.
That's so much of what creating is about. And then if you're on Instagram, you can tag us, Let's Go Make Art, or hashtag Let's Make Art. We actually will not be making kits of any of these individual kits. So if you're interested in painting this project along with our other projects, we have the box called Adventure Awaits. This is all about adventure. We're trying new things.
I love this plan.
Yeah.
Adventure awaits.
Adventure awaits. So, thank you guys for being here. Keenan, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time.